In our last module, we have discussed Pearson's chi-square statistic and its large sample distribution. We have also discussed some applications like goodness of fit. In this module, we start with a special application of goodness of fit when the parameters of the multinomial distribution are dependent on a number of unknown parameters. Then we pass on to our next topic, which is a test for association using Pearson's chi-square statistic, and then lastly we shall discuss test for homogeneity, of course using this Pearson's chi-square statistic. In our next part, we shall discuss another issue which is very common in large sample inference. Actually, we shall discuss comparison of estimators in large samples. Actually, when we have a number of estimators for some estimation problems, so in that case the estimator with minimum possible variance is the best, but often such comparison requires huge calculation of sampling distributions, and hence we need to develop some alternative procedures. However, in large samples there is a very good way to tackle this problem, and this is by means of asymptotic relative efficiency. So starting from consistent estimators, we shall discuss comparison of consistent estimators, that is finding the best estimate among some consistent estimators, and then pass on to asymptotic relative efficiency and give some examples to explain the concept. So let us start with goodness of fit test and with a short recap. Suppose we have a hypothesis P1 equal to P1 naught, P2 equal to P2 naught up to Pk equal to Pk naught, where Pi naught are completely specified. Then we have defined chi-square statistic to measure the discrepancy and give a large sample test and the possible rejection rule, and all these are discussed in our previous module. In this module we start with again goodness of fit test, but with the exception that PIs in this case depend on unknown parameters. So specifically, suppose under the null hypothesis Pi depends on the unknown parameters, and the parameters are theta 1, theta 2 up to theta r. Thus, in such a case, Pi is a function of the unknown parameters theta 1, theta 2, theta r, and naturally we need to estimate these unknown parameters, and we suggest to use method of moments. Suppose theta I hat be the method of moment estimates based on the data. If Pi hat denotes the estimate of Pi, that is which is obtained by plugging in the unknown parameters by its method of moment estimates, then Pearson chi-square statistic takes the form as Vk, which is defined as summation I from 1 to k Fi minus npi hat square divided by npi hat. And it can be shown that as n tends to infinity, the large sample distribution of Vk is a chi-square variable with k minus r minus 1 degrees of freedom. So it should be noted that in our previous case we get some chi-square statistic having k minus 1 degrees of freedom, and in this case we get degrees of freedom as k minus r minus 1. So this reduction is due to the fact that we have estimated r unknown parameters, and thereby we get r linear restrictions, and hence the degrees of freedom for the chi-square variable is reduced. As earlier, since a higher value of Vk indicates departure from the null hypothesis, a right tail test is appropriate, and therefore a large sample test should reject the null hypothesis if the observed value of Vk exceeds the upper alpha percentage points of a chi-square variable with k minus r minus 1 degrees of freedom. So before we conclude, let us shortly discuss some facts related to this. Often the data is available in the form of a group distribution. If npi, that is the expected frequency for the ith class, is less than 5 for some I, the corresponding class is pooled with one or more neighbor classes, so that the expected frequency for the combined class is at least 5. However, In such a case, degrees of freedom becomes number of classes after combining -1 minus the number of parameters estimated. Let us pass on to our next application of Pearson's chi-square statistic, that is test for association. Suppose we have two characters A and B. A has k classes ai from 1 to k, and B has L classes bj, j running from 1 to L, and a population is classified according to these characters. Let Pij be the population proportion for the cell ai and bj. Then summation Pij equals 1, and we define Pi naught as summation j from 1 to L Pij as the population proportion for ai, and similarly P naught j as the population proportion for bj. Suppose we are interested in testing the null hypothesis that A and B, that is these two characters, are independent, which can be equivalently expressed as Pij equal to Pi naught multiplied by P naught j for every ij. So actually this Pij are the cell probabilities and Pi naught, P naught j are the marginal probabilities. So Pearson chi-square statistic can also be used in this case also. So first assume that we have fully specified Pi naught and P naught j. So if we have n observations and we denote the frequency of the cell ai and bj by Fij, then the joint distribution of Fij is again multinomial with parameters n and probabilities Pij. Then as before, one can use the statistic sum over I from 1 to k, then sum over j from 1 to L, Fij minus npij whole square divided by npij to measure the departure from the null hypothesis. Naturally, a higher value indicates possible departure from the null hypothesis, and therefore under the null hypothesis the above statistic converges in distribution to a chi-square variable with degrees of freedom k times L minus 1, and therefore for known Pi naught, P naught j we can construct our large sample tests. But most often the null hypothesis does not specify Pi naught and P naught j, and hence we should estimate these unknown quantities from the data. For the observed data, maximum likelihood estimators are denoted by P hat I naught, and this equals Fi naught divided by n, and P naught j hat defined by F naught j by n. So actually we are estimating marginal probabilities by marginal total frequency divided by total frequency. So plugging in these estimates, we get the statistic Tn dash, which can be equivalently expressed as n times summation I from 1 to k, summation j from 1 to L, Fij square divided by Fi naught F naught j minus 1. And since under the null hypothesis Tn dash has a chi-square distribution with degrees of freedom k minus 1 times L minus 1, a large sample test can be constructed as earlier. It should be mentioned in this case also that estimating unknown Pi naught and P naught j, we impose few linear restrictions, and since we are finding the large sample distribution of a chi-square variable, so linear restrictions reduces the number of degrees of freedom. And next application is test for homogeneity. Suppose we have k populations classified in the same manner according to a character A, where A has L classes Aj, j running from 1 to L. Let Pij be the population proportion for the class Aj in the ith population. Thus summation j from 1 to L Pij equal to 1 for all I. We are interested in testing whether the k populations are similar, that is homogeneous. That is, we want to test the null hypothesis that P1j, P2j, Pkj are all equal to some Pj, and we can again apply Pearson's chi-square statistic in this situation also. So before going to details, let us just chalk out the difference between a test of homogeneity and a test of association. In test of association, we have two characters, A and B, whereas for test of homogeneity we have only a single character A. So while performing this type of tests, we should keep in mind the fact that whether we are checking independence between two characters or we have a single character, and observations are classified like this. Suppose Pj are all specified, then suppose samples of size Ni is taken from the ith population, define Fij as the observed frequency for the class Aj for the ith population, so that sum over j from 1 to L Fij equals Ni. Then the joint distribution of Fij for fixed I is multinomial with parameters Ni and Pij. Naturally, j running from 1 to L, and these variables are independent for each I. Therefore, their sum, that is sum of square divided by their variance, etc., that is the quantity summation j from 1 to L Fij minus Ni Pij whole square divided by Ni Pij is approximately a chi-square variable with L minus 1 degrees of freedom. Due to independence of these variables, the sum, that is summation I from 1 to k of these variables, is approximately a chi-square variable with degrees of freedom k multiplied by L minus 1. Since under the null hypothesis Tn, that is summation I from 1 to k summation j from 1 to L Fij minus Ni Pj whole square divided by Ni Pj converges in distribution to a chi-square variable with degrees of freedom kl minus 1, and a higher value is an indicative of departure from the null hypothesis, we can construct a large sample test which rejects the null hypothesis if Tn exceeds chi-square, the upper alpha percentage points of a chi-square variable with degrees of freedom k times L minus 1. However, Pj's are not always specified, and we need to substitute them by appropriate estimates. One can use the pooled estimate, which is defined as Pj hat is the total frequency for the jth class divided by total frequency, that is which equals summation I from 1 to k Fij divided by n, and we should use this for our purpose. So plugging in these estimates, we get the statistic Tn dash, which can be equivalently expressed as n times summation I from 1 to k summation j from 1 to L Fij square divided by Ni F naught j minus 1, which under H naught is asymptotically a chi-square variable with degrees of freedom k minus 1 multiplied by L minus 1. Again, we have some reduction in degrees of freedom, and this is because of the linear restrictions imposed by estimating Pj hat, by estimating Pj using Pj hat. So as earlier, one can construct the large sample test, a right tilt large sample test. Next, we pass on to some interesting fact related to testing for 2x2 tables. This is known as Yates correction for continuity. So we have already mentioned that we need expected frequencies or their estimates to be large enough for chi-square approximation to hold. It is recommended to combine the low frequency classes into a class with frequency exceeding 5. However, such a procedure cannot be adopted for 2x2 tables. So Yates suggested a modification called Yates correction for continuity for the Pearson chi-square statistic, and which has to be used in 2x2 tables with low cell frequencies. The idea is that for x having a binomial distribution with parameters n and p, for large n, we approximate probability x less than equal to x by capital phi x minus np divided by square root of np multiplied by 1 minus p. But a better approximation is capital phi x plus 0.5 minus np divided by np into 1 minus p. In a similar way, one can approximate probability x greater than equal to small x and find a better estimate using just replacing x by x minus 0.5 in the usual estimate. The idea is to make a smaller x slightly larger and a larger x slightly smaller. So consider a 2x2 contingency table with observed frequencies A, B, C and D in the clockwise order with deficiency to qualify for the chi-square approximation. Yates correction suggests to add or subtract 0.5 to each cell frequency, keeping marginal totals unchanged. For AD greater than BC, we considered the modified frequencies A minus 0.5, B plus 0.5, C plus 0.5 and D minus 0.5. Whereas for AD less than BC, the modified frequencies are A plus 0.5, B minus 0.5, C minus 0.5 and D plus 0.5. So in the former case, the modified chi-square statistic takes the form AD minus BC plus n by 2 whole square divided by A plus C, B plus D, A plus B, C plus D. And in the latter case, the only change is that instead of AD minus BC plus n by 2, we get AD minus BC minus n by 2. So using this statistic, this corrected statistic, one can perform usual tests using chi-square approximation for two cross-root contingency tables. Next we pass on to our next topic, which is large sample properties of estimators. Unbiasedness, possessing minimum variance or small sample properties of estimators, but often the estimators takes implicit forms, or even if the form is tractable, exact sampling distribution is difficult to obtain. Thus, we need alternative criterion for evaluating the performance of estimators. One such property is consistency. The idea is closely related to convergence concepts of probability. So what is consistency? Let xi be observations from a population indexed by a parameter theta. Suppose the interest is to obtain a good substitute of some real valued function g theta, and let Tn, which is a function of the data, be an estimator based on data. It is desirable to have the distance between Tn and g theta as close as possible to 0. This is the ideal situation. But this distance is a random quantity and hence varies across samples. Thus, as an alternative, we need to keep the possibility of a low distance as high as possible. Therefore, we need to maintain the probability that this distance is less than epsilon for some positive epsilon, the supremum of this, the maximum of this distance less than epsilon as high as possible. As n increases, more and more information is gathered, and hence for a reasonable Tn, that is statistic, one would expect that these probabilities should tend to 1 for every epsilon greater than 0. In the former case, Tn is said to be weakly consistent, and in the latter case, Tn is called strongly consistent for theta. However, we confine ourselves to weakly consistent or simply consistent estimators. So let us start with some sufficient conditions for consistency. Let Tn be consistent for g theta and assume that Tn has a finite variance. Then from Chebyshev inequality, for every epsilon greater than 0, probability that the distance between Tn and g theta exceeds epsilon is less than or equal to the mean square error of Tn divided by epsilon square. Thus, if this mean square error tends to 0, then consistency holds. Now, we at once have the relation, the simple relation that MAC of Tn is nothing but the sum of variance of Tn and the square of the bias. Thus, we have the equivalent conditions for consistency as that expectation of Tn tends to theta, that is bias tends to 0 and variance tends to 0. However, it should be mentioned at this stage that the condition regarding mean square error or variance is not necessary. It is only a sufficient one. So let us give some counter example to explain this. Suppose xi are IID random variables with mean mu and finite variance sigma square. Define Tn such that Tn equal to x bar with probability 1 minus 1 by square root of n, and Tn equal to n with probability 1 by square root of n. First, we shall show that Tn is consistent for mu. So first of all, we note that for every epsilon greater than 0, the probability that the distance between Tn and mu is less than epsilon is always greater than the probability that distance between x bar and mu is less than epsilon, whole thing multiplied by 1 minus 1 by square root of n. So for IID random variables, it follows from weak law of large number that x bar converges in probability to mu. Therefore, the second quantity in the right hand side converges to unity. Again, 1 by square root of n tends to 0, and hence for every epsilon greater than 0, we find that the distance between Tn and mu less than epsilon, the probability of this event tends to 1. So Tn is consistent for mu. However, Tn is a function of x bar. So if Fn is the distribution function of x bar, then we observe that the expected value, that is the integral, that absolute value of Tn multiplied by dfn, which equals 1 minus 1 by square root of n multiplied by integral of absolute value of x bar dfn plus n divided by square root of n diverges, and hence the expected value and hence the mean square error of Tn is not finite. So we arrive at an example where convergence to probability, that is consistency, holds, but expectation is not finite. So the sufficient conditions cannot be used in this case. Next, consider comparing consistent estimators. If T1n and T2n are both consistent for theta, then MAC converges to 0 for every k. Thus, the estimator which converges at a faster rate is preferable. For example, if we can show that mean square error for T1n is less than mean square error for T2n, then T1n converges at a faster rate. Let us consider an example. Consider estimation of sigma square based on IID observations from a normal population with mean mu and variance sigma square. Suppose we consider 3 estimators of the form Ckn multiplied by S square, where S square is the sample variance. We have considered 3 values of Ckn, namely C1n as 1 by n, C2n as 1 divided by n plus 1, and C3n as 1 by n minus 1. Then T1n is simply the maximum likelihood estimator, T2n is minimum MAC estimator, and T3n is the minimum variance unbiased estimator. So considering the fact that n minus 1 S square divided by sigma square has a chi-square distribution with n minus 1 degrees of freedom, it is easy to establish that the mean square error for T2n is less than mean square error for T1n, and this is less than mean square error of T3n. Hence, T2n converges at a faster rate. Thus, it is interesting to note at this point that the best estimator for small samples, that is best means minimum variance unbiased estimator, performs poorer in large samples. So next we consider another criterion for comparing estimators, that is asymptotic variance criterion. It should be noted that finding exact mean square error requires huge calculation, that is calculation of the sampling distribution, and hence we should develop a simpler criterion based on asymptotic normality, because asymptotic normality is easy to check. A consistent estimator Tn for gamma theta is said to be consistent and asymptotic normal if, in addition to consistency, asymptotic normality, that is square root of Tn square root of n multiplied by Tn minus theta, converges in distribution to a normal distribution with variance sigma square theta, holds for some positive sigma square theta. Naturally, among CAN estimators, that is consistent and asymptotically normal estimators, the estimator with the smallest possible sigma square theta is the best, that is, it is best asymptotically normal. So next we consider Fisher's notion of efficiency. Looking at the fact that in a regular estimation case based on NIID observations, the minimum attainable variance for an unbiased estimator of gamma theta is gamma dash theta whole square divided by n times I theta, where I theta is the Fisher's information based on a single observation. Fisher argued that the minimum attainable value of sigma square theta should be this gamma dash theta whole square divided by I theta. Consequently, Fisher defined Tn as asymptotically efficient or asymptotically optimal if this equality holds for every theta. However, such an estimator does not exist in general. So one can consider the counter example by Hodges and Leckham to explain this deficiency. In fact, Hodges and Leckham showed that we can consistent estimator starting from a consistent estimator such that the asymptotic variance of the latter is less than the former for some theta. That is, they have defined some Tn and showed that in the large sample Tn has an asymptotically normal distribution, but for some value of theta this asymptotic variance is less than the asymptotic variance of the original estimator. So this means even if we can find some estimator whose large sample variance equals the information, we can still obtain another estimator whose large sample variance is less than this variance, at least for some point of theta. So asymptotically efficient estimators does not exist in the sense of Fisher. So next we consider Pitman's notion of asymptotic efficiency. Consider two sequence of estimators T1n and T2n for gamma theta such that the large sample distribution of T1n is normal with variance tau square, and large sample distribution of T2n where T2n dash is based on n dash observations is again large sum is asymptotically normal with the same variance. Then asymptotic relative efficiency, that is ARE of T1n with respect to T2n, is defined as ARE 1 given 2 as limit n tends to infinity n dash n divided by n, provided the limit exists and is independent of the subsequence n dash. Naturally, T1n is better or worse asymptotically according as this ARE exceeds 1 or is less than 1. However, if the large sample distribution of Tkn is normal with mean 0 and variance sigma square k, then this ARE can be expressed as sigma 2 square divided by sigma 1 square. So let us consider an example, very simple example. This compares sample mean and sample median. Let xi be IID observations from a distribution function given by fx minus theta, where fx plus f of minus x equal to 1 for all x, that is symmetry, and we also assume that the variance of the observations is sigma square and is finite. If the first derivative of f, that is small fx, is non-zero and continuous in a neighborhood of theta, then it can be shown that the large sample distribution of T1n is normal with mean 0 and variance sigma square, and the large sample distribution of T2n is again normal with mean 0 but with variance 1 by 4 times f square theta, where T1n is the sample mean and T2n is the sample median. Then the asymptotic relative efficiency of the second estimator subject to as compared to the first estimator, that is ARE 2 given 1, is 4 sigma square f square multiplied by f square theta. Now for normal theta 1 variable, we find that this ARE comes out as 2 by pi, which is less than 1, whereas for double exponential theta 1 parent we get this ARE equals 2, which is more than 1. Thus we find that for double exponential parent, sample median is asymptotically more efficient than the sample mean. So this is our last module for large sample inference, and we have started large sample inference using the scope of large sample procedures in statistics, then defined and given some mathematical preliminaries using some mathematical analysis results and results on sequences, series and Taylor series and sequence of functions, and then proceed to some convergence results in statistics, and then finally using some delta methods obtain the large sample distributions of different sample summary measures, and finally we end with Pearson's chi-square statistic, and lastly we discussed asymptotic relative efficiency for comparing the performance of estimators in large samples. However, I expect that this will be just a starting point for learning large sample inference, and students should develop more using some more materials starting from